It was the middle of the 1990s, on an early morning in November, when Samir woke up to a persistent knock at his door. It was his father. Samir lived with his parents and his younger brother in the small town of Nagaon in northeast India. He had recently graduated and had been applying for jobs for quite some time. His father was unusually excited that morning. A letter had arrived from a reputed tea estate, addressed to Samir. Still half asleep, Samir reluctantly opened the letter. His eyes widened as he read it. Suddenly, he let out a joyful scream and jumped onto his bed. His parents and younger brother stared at him in surprise. Samir had received his appointment letter from Hill Valley Tea Estate. He had been appointed as an assistant manager and was required to join within 2 days. For Samir, it was a dream come true. He boarded a bus to begin a new chapter in his life. He was excited at the thought of working in a tea estate surrounded by nature. It was exactly the kind of life he had always dreamed of. By evening, Samir reached Hill Valley. From the highway, he had to walk for nearly 2 kilometers along a narrow road leading into the estate. Eventually, he reached the factory and office complex. There, he was received by Gopi Da, the factory assistant. Gopi Da was quite a character. Fair, slightly overweight, clean-shaven, and always chewing betel nut. His lips were permanently stained red because of it. The locals affectionately called him Gopuda, partly because of his appearance and partly because of his cheerful and somewhat eccentric nature. Gopida told Samir that he would show him his bungalow and introduce him to the housekeeping staff. The following morning, he would take Samir to the manager's bungalow and introduce him to the estate manager. Samir's staff bungalow was about 1 kilometer away from the factory. Gopida arranged a bicycle for him and told him that it belonged to the manager and that Samir could use it during his stay at the estate. The bungalow was very old. It had been built during the British era, long before India's independence. It was a charming but somewhat eerie structure with 2 bedrooms, each with an attached bathroom, a hall, a dining area, a kitchen, and a garden surrounding the house. There were 2 verandas, one at the front and another at the back. 2 security guards worked in shifts, and there was also a cook who prepared dinner every evening. Once dinner was served, the cook would leave for the night. After explaining everything, Gopi Da left Samir and told him to get some rest. He promised to return early the next morning. Samir was exhausted after the long journey. After dinner, he went straight to bed and quickly fell asleep. The next morning, he woke up early. Soon afterward, Gopi Da arrived, and the 2 of them set off for the manager's bungalow. Mr. David, the estate manager, was a middle-aged man with only a few years left before retirement. He was cheerful and welcoming. He greeted Samir warmly, explained his responsibilities, and invited him to join him for dinner that evening. "I feel lonely in the evenings," Mr. David said with a smile. "I could use some company." Samir agreed. Within a few days, Samir began to settle into his new life. He loved his job. Every morning, he would head into the tea gardens, where laborers worked among the endless rows of tea bushes. He would observe the workers plucking fresh tea leaves before heading to the factory, where he spends the rest of the day supervising the production work. After work, he would ride his bicycle back to his bungalow. Sometimes, he would visit Mr. David for dinner and spend the evening chatting with him. Everything was going perfectly. until one evening. After finishing work, Samir mounted his bicycle and started towards his bungalow. It was an unusually cold and foggy evening. A bright moon hung in the sky, casting a pale, silvery light over the tea garden. As Samir rode along the deserted road, he noticed a woman standing by the roadside. She appeared to be a local tea garden laborer. She was wearing a sari with what looked like a shawl or blanket wrapped around her body. Most of her face was covered, only her chin was visible. As Samir approached, she slowly raised her hand. "Salam, Babu," she said. Samir simply nodded and continued riding. But after going a few yards, for some inexplicable reason, he looked back. His heart almost stopped. The woman was gone. She had been standing there only moments earlier. There was nowhere for her to have disappeared to. A chill ran down Samir's spine. Without wasting another second, he pedaled furiously towards his bungalow. When he reached the compound, he jumped off his bicycle and hurried towards the front veranda. He tried to switch on the veranda light. It flickered once and went out. Samir's heart began pounding. He rushed inside to the living room and tried the light there. It went out as well. He ran to the back veranda and tried the switch. Again, the light went off. Now Samir was trembling. He quickly called for the night duty security guard. Hearing the panic in his voice, the guard came rushing to the bungalow. "What happened, Babu?" he asked. Samir narrated the entire incident. The guard listened quietly before trying to reassure him. "These kinds of things sometimes happen in remote places like this," he said. "Don't worry. You should get some rest." But his words did little to calm Samir's nerves. The next morning, Samir told Gopida about what had happened. Gopida tried to brush it aside. "Maybe you were tired after a long day," he said. "Sometimes, when we are exhausted, our eyes can play tricks on us." But Samir wasn't convinced. Something about Gopida's reaction bothered him. The day passed uneventfully. That evening, Samir once again took his bicycle and headed towards his bungalow. As he approached the same spot, he became increasingly anxious. Would he see the woman again? He slowed down and looked carefully around him. There was no one there. Relieved, Samir continued riding. He had gone only a couple of minutes when he suddenly heard a woman's voice behind him. "Salam, Babu." Samir froze. He gathered every ounce of courage he had and slowly turned around. There she was, the same woman. She stood motionless in the middle of the road, her face once again covered up to her chin. Samir didn't wait. He pedaled as fast as he could and raced towards his bungalow. The moment he reached home, he ran straight to his bedroom, locked the door from inside, and collapsed onto the bed. He felt weak and nauseous. His entire body was trembling. He pulled the blanket over himself and remained there, too frightened to move. The following morning, Samir was unable to go to work. He had developed a fever and was deeply disturbed by what had happened. When Gopida heard about his condition, he came to visit him that evening. As soon as he arrived, Samir confronted him. "Gopida, please tell me about that woman. Who is she? Why does she keep appearing to me? Has anyone else seen her?" Gopida took a deep breath. For a moment, he remained silent. Then he finally said, "I didn't want to tell you before. I was afraid it would make you uncomfortable." He sat down beside Samir and began to tell him the story. The woman had been a tea estate laborer. Her husband was an alcoholic and had a violent temper. He would often beat her for no reason. One day, he saw her talking to some men from the nearby village. Consumed by jealousy and rage, he attacked her and beat her to death. After committing the crime, he fled. The police had been searching for him ever since. The murder had taken place only a short time before Samir joined the estate. Since then, Gopida continued, people from the nearby villages have occasionally seen her wandering around the estate at night. Samir sat silently, absorbing the terrible story. He felt deeply sorry for the woman. After a moment, he asked, "But why hasn't the police caught her husband yet?" Samir called the officer in charge and requested that the search be intensified. "He has to be brought to justice," Samir said firmly, "so that the other women living in this area can feel safe." A few days later, Samir recovered and returned to work. That morning, Gopida approached him with some surprising news. "The police caught the woman's husband last night, Sar," he said. Samir's eyes widened. Samir felt a strange sense of relief. At last, he thought, justice had been served. Gopida smiled and added, "Perhaps your call helped. Maybe the authorities took the matter more seriously after you spoke to the officer." Samir smiled quietly. He felt that, in some small way, he had helped the dead woman find justice. The day passed quickly. Samir was busy catching up on his pending work. As evening approached, he took his bicycle and began his journey back to the bungalow. But as he rode through the estate, the old fear returned. He wondered if he would see the mysterious woman again. As he approached the place where she had appeared on the previous 2 nights, he slowed down. There was no one there. He crossed the spot. He waited. Perhaps he would hear her voice from behind once again. But nothing happened. No voice, no footsteps, no woman in the veil. Only the cold night air and the rustling tea bushes. Samir continued riding at a normal pace and eventually reached his bungalow safely. From that night onward, he never saw the mysterious woman again. Perhaps her restless soul had finally found peace after the arrest of her killer. Or perhaps, having received the justice she had been waiting for, she no longer had any reason to return. Years later, Samir was transferred to another tea estate. Whenever he remembered those cold November nights at Hill Valley Tea Estate, he could still hear that haunting voice in his mind. Salam Babu.
If you enjoy mysterious, spine-chilling stories and unexplained encounters like this one, make sure you follow and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next story. Because here, every story hides a secret. And sometimes, the truth is far more frightening than fiction.